At the class reunion, he came with his beautiful girlfriend, having achieved great success. She said, if you hadn't let go, you would be the mistress of Darren's company now. He sat opposite, hugging his girlfriend, with a cold look. It's all in the past. The crowd didn't mind the big deal and started to make a fuss. Under his gaze, I silently covered the scar on my wrist and forced a smile. Yes, the two of us have long been apart. I remember that it was Allison who broke up with me, right? While his girlfriend went to the bathroom, his classmates started talking about it. Allison is me. Darren sat opposite him, a faint smile on his lips, but his eyes were extremely cold. This was the first time we met after breaking up 6 years ago. Everything was a little unexpected. I came because my classmates said Darren wouldn't come. I didn't expect to meet you here. Today, Darren is a successful and well-known young entrepreneur in the city and a returnee. He was dressed in a suit and had a handsome appearance. The watch on his wrist alone is priceless. Everyone holds it in high esteem and respects it. Looking back at me, I am not as good as before. It was indeed she who broke up first. Darren answered everyone's questions in a calm tone. Everyone has their own imagination. It's nothing more than that I worship money, can't stand hardship, bet on the wrong person, and lose everything. Allison, I heard that the man you followed later went to jail, right? I heard that you took on his debt. Are you here to ask for money at this class reunion? Amid the ridicule of the crowd, Darren's calm and deep eyes remained on me without saying a word. I smiled awkwardly and didn't answer. The door was pushed open, and Darren's girlfriend walked in again. Noticing the strange atmosphere, she asked with a smile. What happened while I was away? Darren changed his previous silence and gently held her hand. Nothing, just catching up. She sat down calmly, her eyes fixed on me, and a smile brought up dimples at the corners of her mouth. Darren told me about you. If he hadn't let go, you would be the mistress of Darren's company now. Many people showed a look of gloating in their eyes. Back then, my family was at its peak, and wherever I went, I was the center of attention. This jealousy will not disappear with time, but will become a reason for them to add insult to injury many years later. Darren broke the awkwardness by speaking, his voice cold and irresistible. It's all in the past. Everyone fell silent, realizing that the boss didn't want to continue this topic, and started talking about other things. His girlfriend toasted me, thank you for letting me go. You must come when we get married. I silently covered the scar on my wrist and said woodenly, congratulations. Why don't you explain it to him? On the phone, my good friend Gina was speaking up for me. The class reunion ended early. I stood in the cold wind wrapped in my coat and exhaled hot air. He has a girlfriend. There was a pause on the other end of the phone. You have a girlfriend? Gina couldn't believe it. Right. The students left together, and the light from the street lamps reflected on the snow like broken glass. It's a pity that you finally got to see him, after working so hard for so long. Gina, no one will wait for you here forever. Some words, if not said at the time, will have no effect other than adding to the disgust when said later. The cold wind made my eyes cold and painful. I blinked my sore eyes and said, I give up. Even though I tried so hard for so many years, struggled out of the quagmire, and wanted to reunite with him in the most decent way, it was too late. Okay, then we'll talk when you come back. The temperature before the spring festival had dropped below zero, and it was difficult to get a taxi. I stood for a while and my hands were frozen. The phone shows that you are in the queue. There was the sound of high heels behind me, accompanied by a woman's gentle voice, Darren, the snow is so beautiful. It's cold outside, go to the car first, I'll be there in a minute. Darren's voice is very iconic. Then hurry up. When the woman passed by me, she gave me a meaningful look. Then he walked to a nearby place and opened the car door. His action just exposed the bracelet hanging on his wrist, which was particularly eye-catching. It's a family heirloom in Darren's family. I wore it on my hand back then, and when we broke up, I asked someone to return it to Darren. So she is not only a girlfriend but also a fiancée. The crowd had all gone, leaving only him and I. The car I ordered hasn't arrived yet. Darren stood behind me the whole time, not saying a word. The two people just sat there in silence, with two overlapping shadows under the street light. My thoughts went back to the night of our breakup when Darren had a car accident on his way to see me. His friend called and said unkindly, "Darren is in the hospital. Is his life in danger? You won't come without you? Please take good care of him. Allison, he got a place to study abroad, and he will have money sooner or later. Why can't you wait a little longer? Are you so short of money? Have you forgotten everything he did for you?" His friend almost broke down on the phone and almost called me an ungrateful person. The phone was suddenly snatched away and dropped. It can be said that I was the one who abandoned him. It's normal for him to hate me. How much do you owe? Darren pulled me out of my memories with a cold tone. It's none of your business. I took a breath of cold air, and my throat, which had just been irritated by the alcohol, felt sore and I suddenly started to cough. The cold air cuts the trachea, causing severe pain. I bent down and held onto the lamppost. The wine I had just drunk began to churn in my stomach, choking me and causing tears to stream down my face. Darren stood next to me, watching coldly. The taxi slowly stopped in front of me, and the driver stuck his head out of the car. "Are we going to Wanha Mansion?" "Yes." I supported myself on my knees, stood up, took a breath and tried to open the car door, but suddenly someone grabbed my arm and dragged me over. I bumped into Darren's arms unexpectedly, and he asked, "What are you doing there?" Wanha Mansion is a wealthy area and they won't let anyone in easily. I tried to push Darren's hand away, but he grabbed my wrist. The scorching body temperature touched my skin and entered my heart. I struggled twice, but failed to break free. I looked up at Darren's dark and unclear face and asked, "What do you want to say?" He pursed his lips, his dark eyes were deep and calm, his emotions unclear. The cold wind howled and ruffled my hair. I raised my lips and told him what he was thinking. "You think the money I make is not clean, like everyone else, right? 50,000 a month, is that enough?" Darren interrupted me with a cold face. "What's the meaning?" Darren's eyes finally showed a layer of sarcasm. "Aren't you short of money? 50,000, 100,000, isn't it enough for you to open it?" I suddenly raised my hand, and the loud sound of applause echoed through the night. 5 clear finger marks appeared on Darren's face. A woman screamed in the distance, and she opened the car door and rushed out. "Live your life well and don't stretch your hands too far." I said this and left in the car. "Did you hit him?" Gina poured me a cup of hot water. "Well, he wants to support me." I curled up on the sofa, enduring waves of stomach cramps, and slowly drank the water. After a while, he suddenly turned around and ran to the toilet to vomit. Gina patted my back and said, "You drink alcohol when your stomach is not feeling well." I took a few breaths and wiped off the water stains left on my lips after rinsing. My esophagus felt burning. "I've loved you for so many years, is it worth it?" I raised my eyes and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyelashes were wet, my black hair was wet and stuck to my forehead, and my face was a little pale. Gina's complaints came from far away and were hard to hear. "If you hadn't been so cruel to break up with him, he wouldn't be where he is today." I thought about Darren's fiancée again. Compared to me, she is more splendid and bright. I vaguely remember that I was like that many years ago. But then I fell so badly that when I climbed out of the ditch, everything had changed. After Gina finished her work at Wanha Mansion, we held hands and walked back to the rental house. Suddenly, I received a call from Darren's friend. "Allison, if you're having trouble, I can arrange a job for you." I didn't say anything, waiting to hear what he had to say. "They are getting married next month. Helen is a nice person and her family is not bad. I won't bother him anymore, don't worry." He was silent for a moment, trying in vain to explain, "We just want Darren to have a better life." "I understand." All of my friends back then, without exception, stood on Darren's side. After hanging up the phone, Gina's eyes turned red. "They don't understand anything. It doesn't matter. Since I was going to stay here for a while, I found a job not far from home." During the interview, the interviewer asked suspiciously, "Do you have depression?" "It happened before, but now I am fine. I have a doctor's certificate." Several companies rejected me for this reason when they were doing background checks. This company is relatively small, and I received the employment notice that same evening. I thought the class reunion would be the last time Darren and I would interact with each other. Unexpectedly, 3 days later, Darren joined our company and became my boss. My workstation was moved to the door of Darren's office. I refuse. Okay. Darren said coldly without even looking up, submit your resignation report to the Human Resources Department. I laughed angrily, you're going to fire me just because I don't agree to change my position? He paused with his pen and finally condescended to look up and talk to me. I just gave you a choice. Do you think I want something from you? I choked, remembering Gina arguing with someone for a little rent last night. I forced a smile and said, my boss is an upright person, so I'm not afraid. Darren nodded slightly. Thank you. Close the door on your way out. Also, turn your chair away from me. I don't want to see your face. For the rest of the day, we had almost no interaction. A week later, the company had team building. Since I was a newcomer, I was forced to drink too much. Allison, if you don't drink, your salary will be deducted. Don't worry, we'll take you back when you're drunk. We're all women, there's nothing to be afraid of. The manager smiled and urged me to drink. Amid the jeers of the crowd, I drank the last glass of the night and fell unconscious on the table. The next day, I woke up in a big bed. The bright sunshine makes it hard to open your eyes. I propped myself up and sat up, the quilt slipped off, revealing the soft bathrobe wrapped around my body. I was stunned for a moment, then stood up and walked out. In the bright living room, Darren was sitting cross-legged and reading the morning paper, also wearing the hotel's bathrobe. Seeing me come out, he lifted his eyelids and glanced at me calmly. Wake up, breakfast is on the table, eat and then go to sleep for a while. A sense of horror swept through my body, and my face turned pale. Darren casually threw the morning newspaper on the coffee table and slightly opened his collar, revealing an ambiguous kiss mark. Unfortunately, you took the initiative last night. I felt like I was struck by lightning and my memory of last night was completely blank. Impossible. Darren put a contract in front of me with my fingerprint on it. The general content was that if I became his lover, he would pay me $100,000 a month. I couldn't have pressed that. Really? Darren chuckled. Are you sure? Facing his serious and frank gaze, I opened my mouth, but didn't say a word. He ignored my embarrassment and took out a recorder. I accidentally recorded your monologue last night. Do you want to hear your dirty thoughts? I shuddered all over, as if I had fallen into an ice cellar. A huge wave of shame washed over me. This kind of thought is dirty enough when it is hidden, and now that it has been spoken out, it is used as evidence, just like committing a crime. Darren lowered his eyebrows, and it was hard to tell the emotion in his eyes. Coveting a married man. TSK, Allison, how about letting them listen to this recording? I clenched my hands tightly, digging my nails into my palms. Are you taking revenge on me? Yes. He answered casually, you didn't want me to have an easy life at the beginning, so why should I let you have an easy life? Two choices. Either you fulfill the contract, or I will make the recording public. The clock in the corner ticked, and along with the sound of my heartbeat, it hit my eardrums again and again. My lips were chapped and I looked up woodenly. Then let's make it public. Under his cold gaze, I said numbly. Darren, I won't be the third party. Darren looked at me seriously and smiled. Allison, who do you think you are? Do you still have the right to choose? I found my messy clothes in the bathroom. Darren's clothes were neatly placed on the hanger at the door, clearly separated. The scene in front of me hurt my eyes. I sighed, changed my clothes silently, and walked out of the hotel. Gina called, her tone was difficult. Allison, they want $500,000. The sky was gray and the sun was not visible. Gina didn't save any money to pay for my treatment, and my savings were also very little. They said if you don't give it to me, they will expose your affairs and won't tell you where your aunt's belongings and ashes are. I'll try to get a part of my salary in advance and borrow some money from others. I should have enough by next month. Good. After some hesitation, I dialed a number. It took a while for the call to be connected. Allison, what's up? I exhaled and said, Dr. Smith, I'm sorry to bother you. Smith seems to be very busy. After many twists and turns, he finally arrived at a quiet place and asked patiently, are you having any trouble? I took a deep breath and asked, can you lend me $400,000? This was the first time I asked someone to borrow money, and after I said it, I felt like my whole body was on fire. There was a sudden noise from the other end. Dr. Smith, emergency surgery. New. I didn't hold out much hope and was prepared for him to hang up the phone. At the last moment, Smith said briefly, "Send me the card number and I'll call you today." After saying that, the phone hung up. The sky is still gray. The cold, busy tone suddenly became warm. In the evening, the manager knocked on my desk and said, "I have to have dinner with a client tonight, you come with me." I just asked him for a month's salary advance a few hours ago. Together with the borrowed money and previous savings, he barely managed to scrape together $500,000. When I walked into the private room, I saw Darren. Look at that tall figure greeting everyone with ease. The light reflected by the crystal chandelier outlined his handsome profile. The manager gently pushed me forward. Suddenly, all eyes were on me. "Darren, is this someone from your company?" Darren glanced casually and smiled. "Yes, new guy." "What newcomer needs Darren to take care of him?" "He looks good." While chatting, everyone sat down. The manager seated me next to Darren and whispered, "Be smart tonight and resist the alcohol when necessary." Everyone asked implicitly, "Darren, can your new employee drink? Or can he not drink?" Without waiting for Darren to answer, the manager quickly replied, "Yes, you can drink it." Then he pushed the glass in front of me and said, "Let me toast you first." Darren smiled and said nothing, tapping the table lightly. I picked up the glass, held my breath, and drank it all in one gulp. The spicy wine rushed into the esophagus unscrupulously, igniting fire all the way and roaring and churning in the stomach. Everyone cheered and was about to pursue the matter, but Darren changed the subject. "Where were we talking about? Let's continue." The atmosphere was lively and many people wanted to toast Darren with wine, but he made the excuse that he had a bad stomach and didn't drink a single sip. In the end, the manager found various ways to force all the food into my stomach. Finally, I couldn't hold it anymore and went to the bathroom. The faucet in the sink was turned on, and I kept retching. My hair became loose and fell into the sink, becoming wet in a short while. After sending the text message to Gina, I was completely exhausted. I lowered my head and lay on the sink, breathing heavily with my eyes closed. There were slow and unhurried footsteps coming from outside the door. The door was pushed open. I thought it was some woman using the restroom. Who knew? Darren's voice came, his tone calm, "You can't hold on any longer." I gathered my strength, propped myself up, and staggered out. Darren grabbed his arm and dragged him back. A large hand touched the back of my neck. Scalding hot. "Let me go." The stomach acid corroded my throat and it hurt every time I spoke. Darren dragged me to the mirror easily, asked me to face the mirror, lifted my chin, sneered. "Take a good look at yourself. If you go out like this, aren't you afraid of being targeted by someone with ulterior motives?" The me in the mirror had moist eyes, rosy cheeks, messy hair hanging by my ears, and my collar was open. Darren looked at my body through the mirror with his deep eyes. I closed my eyes, my whole body trembling slightly. "Who could have more ulterior motives than you?" Darren chuckled and kissed my ear. "Come back with me tonight, okay? Roll." He ruthlessly blocked my mouth and squeezed the oxygen out of my lungs. Under the influence of alcohol, the blood rushed wildly in the body like boiling magma. The light blurred into clusters, and the water droplets seemed to be separated by a layer of film. Drop by drop, like sulfuric acid dripping on my heart. It makes people feel miserable. I broke out in a sweat and slapped him weakly. It was as if I was dragged back to those dark days. Staring at this colorful world in despair, they are out of tune with it. "Darren, can you please let me go?" I was falling silently and hitting the bottom of the well hard. Probably painful. But I can't feel it anymore. "Allison. Darren is calling me." It's no longer the look that wants me to die. He panicked. To the point that I couldn't tell whether the person in front of me was him when he was young or him now. I said, "Darren, I never want to see you again." The fever was severe. My mind was in a state of confusion, my whole body was in excruciating pain, and I curled up in the quilt, shaking constantly. The north wind was howling outside the window, and in a daze, I dreamed of the past. I lay on Darren's back and asked, "Darren, what if I die?" He walked forward steadily with me on his back, coaxing me softly, "Don't talk nonsense, it's just a fever, It will be fine after the injection. Hey, do you have enough living expenses? Injections are expensive. It doesn't matter. How can it be okay? How many jobs do you have? Darren didn't answer. He put me down at the nurse's station, squatted in front of me, and said seriously, "As long as you are safe, it doesn't matter what happens to me." I huddled in my thick down jacket and said in a tangled way, "When my parents stop quarreling, I'll ask them to pay you back for your living expenses." Darren stroked my hair, his eyes gentle. "Trust me, we will be rich in the future." But I didn't live as peacefully as he hoped. The night Darren was away competing in a competition, I came home and pushed open the door to my parents' bedroom. Dad held the other woman in his arms. My glamorous life began to collapse from that moment on. What followed was a violent quarrel between my parents, my father's sudden departure without saying goodbye, and my family was deeply in debt. Late one night, a group of middle-aged men came to the door to collect debts. The swaying light above my head, the man's excited shouting, the dull pain and disgusting touch of my skin, and my mother's heart-wrenching curses, all mixed together into a pot of paste, surging in my mind. The camera seemed to have pressed the fast-forward button. My mother was forced to death in the bathtub by her creditors. Gina found me half-naked and took me to the far South City. On a rainy day, I curled up in a corner of the hospital, wearing mourning clothes and looking shabby. She has a family history of depression. Does she have any relatives? Gina looked at me worriedly. She has a boyfriend who is out of town participating in a competition. Tell him to come over. The doctor's words were mixed with some professional terms. She has obvious suicidal tendencies now. Treatment is very difficult. She will need someone to stay with her for a few years. The family members should be prepared for a protracted battle. My mental state at that time could no longer support me to call the police to collect evidence and seek justice. Gina and I were like two lost dogs. He fled the place where he had lived since childhood, disarming himself. That same day, Darren's name was first on the list of winners of the competition. He got a place to study abroad. Called. After picking up the phone, I heard the whistling sound of wind on the other side. "Allison," Darren's voice was extremely gentle, "I will marry you in 3 years." I looked at the slowly closing iron gate and could no longer find the way home. "Darren, I may not be able to stay with you." I held back my sobs, and tears fell quietly. He held his breath. "Why?" I opened my mouth, and for a moment, I hesitated. "His future is bright." "Do you really want to selfishly trap Darren in the rainy South City for the rest of his life?" Outside a window, a girl was crying bitterly behind the fence. The boy's face was filled with sad numbness and disgust. I saw love disappear from eyes. It was despairing. The wind blew up his hair, revealing the dark bruises from bites and pinches on his neck. I wiped my tears and said, "Darren, please be fine, let's forget about it." I could hear the ticking sound of instruments. The setting sun shone through the gaps in the blinds and fell on the sofa not far away, like a beautiful layer of sprinkled gold. I blinked, the nightmare receding, and I sat up. The man sat on the sofa, lowering his head and quietly peeling an apple. The white and slender fingers were very dexterous, and in a short while a whole fruit appeared. Round and clean. "It's Darren." He heard the noise, raised his eyes, met my gaze, stood up silently, and rang the bell. The doctor came in quickly, took a picture of my pupils, and after confirming that there was nothing wrong with me, he turned to Darren and said, "She is not getting enough nutrition. She can focus on supplementing some protein in her daily diet." Darren nodded. "Thank you." The door was closed. He walked to the bed and handed me the apple. "Don't think about anything else. Get well first." I didn't answer it. Instead, I got out of bed and opened the cabinet to look for it. The cell phone is missing. There were no outer clothes either. He let me torment myself in the ward. "Darren, what do you want to do?" I stood barefoot on the ground. A beam of sunlight came in and my pale, haggard face was reflected on the glass. "Don't you know what I want to do?" Darren placed the apple on the bedside table, pulled out a tissue, and slowly wiped his hands clean. "I want you." He just sat there in the light, his dark eyes staring at me unabashedly. His gaze was hot and humiliating. I trembled and clenched my hands. Darren, you can't do this to me. Darren stood up, took 2 or 3 steps to me, looked down at me, and smoothed my hair. Why not? I already have someone I like, please stop bothering me. Really? Darren didn't smile at all. He held my face, lowered his head closer, and stopped when his lips were 1 centimeter away from mine. I couldn't break free from him. The moment I turned my head to the side, I closed my eyes, and my body shivered uncontrollably. Darren laughed, and his cold voice filled his ears. Allison, you are lying. The private hospital is located in the suburbs, with endless woods outside the window. I couldn't get out and couldn't contact anyone. I tried to ask doctors and nurses for help, but they said there was nothing they could do. Darren comes every day. Most of the time it was in the evening when he would come, exhausted, and talk to me for a while. I was very resistant to any intimacy with him, and Darren didn't force it. Lately, I'd been dreaming about things from the past. At that time, Darren's name was on my lips all the time. I said, Darren, you're going to be very rich in the future. Darren sighed silently. What flavor of milk do you want today? Banana. As a result, in order to buy me banana milk, Darren, an excellent student, skipped class for the first time and was caught by the teacher. Later, I went to college. Rumors about his affair with the school beauty began to spread around the school. I took the subway for more than 10 stops and sat down downstairs of the boys' dormitory crying. Darren, dressed in the middle of the night, hurried downstairs and gently wiped my tears away. Don't cry, I'm yours. From now on, there will only be you. That's not how confession works. He was stunned and hugged me tightly. I love you. At that time, we probably couldn't have guessed that this would be the situation a dozen years later. Tomorrow, I'm getting married. The sunset outside the window has not yet set, and the residual warmth is still there. Darren's voice pulled me back from my thoughts. Is there anything you want to tell me? I held the half-drunk cup of milk and stared at his face in a daze. Suddenly I understood why I have been dreaming so frequently recently. I'm saying goodbye to the Allison and Darren of the past. News about him and Helen is broadcast on TV every day. Very well matched. That was the future we hoped for. But Allison is now in a mess. What qualifications does she have? Congratulations, I said. I hope you have a baby soon. Darren paused while peeling the apple. The blade rubbed against his fingertips, and blood soon seeped out. He was stunned for a moment, took out a tissue and held it, lowered his head and smiled. It's okay. She and I are just going through the motions. Do you want a child? I have no objection. Darren, let's just call it quits, okay? I suddenly felt very tired. Everyone should be decent. Darren didn't even peel the apples. He threw them back into the fruit basket and stared at the nest with a hint of sarcasm. Is that it? Why? You were the one who started it, and in the end you just said you were tired of it and walked away calmly. Then what am I? A dog? I closed my eyes, dispelling the halo of sunlight shining in my eyes. Then I will give it back to you. Darren froze. What did you say? I looked at the setting sun and said, if you don't want me to have a good life, I can die. My chin was suddenly grabbed and I turned my head to meet Darren's angry eyes. Allison, are you sick? If you wanted to die so badly, why didn't you just die? I can't remember when he left. That night, Darren's friend Eden, who was also my friend for many years, pushed open the door and came in. Allison, what did you promise me? I was stunned by his barrage of questions. Do you know how much Darren will lose if we cancel the engagement? You are an adult now. Can you please stop acting on your own and letting Darren solve everything for you? Can you please think about him? What's wrong? What's wrong? Eden laughed angrily and roared at me. Darren wants to break off the engagement because of you. And you still ask me what's wrong? My ears were ringing and I sat there in a daze, my mind blank. He openly broke off the engagement. Where does that put me? A third party who destroys other people's families? Eden dragged me off the bed forcefully. Come with me, weren't you very good at it back then? Tired of playing around, got a new love, so many excuses, just come up with one. Eden. Allison. Eden was shaking with anger. If you don't come back, will these things still happen? The roar echoed in the wind and snow, and the howling north wind froze all my senses. There was a buzzing in my ears and I couldn't hear anything. The look in his eyes was filled with unprecedented hatred. It seems like I should die like this. Eden, he won't let me go. Eden's face turned cold. After this is done, I'll send you away. The office building is brightly lit late at night. Eden pulled me in, but unfortunately, the press conference had already started. Darren took his time in the spotlight. I heard that the reason you broke off the marriage was because of a third party? He handled the reporter's questions with ease. Helen and I had some disagreements and parted ways amicably. Eden's face turned pale and he held my wrist tightly, not allowing me to move around. But according to insiders, you and your first love have rekindled their old relationship. Darren was calm and composed. These are just rumors. If there are no other questions, today's press conference ends here. The moment he stood up, someone suddenly shouted. She's here. That's her. All the cameras in the venue were instantly focused on this side. I was exposed in the spotlight, embarrassed and stunned. Reporters swarmed in, and in just a few seconds, the area was completely blocked. Questions came one after another. What is your relationship with Darren? Did you really interfere with other people's marriages? The shudder sounds came one after another. Darren's smile suddenly froze, and he stood up, pushed through the crowd and walked towards me. No. I don't. I argued weakly, but my voice was soon overwhelmed by their strong desire for knowledge, and questions followed one after another. There's new information. A reporter shouted in surprise, holding up his phone. My voice came from it, with a sobbing tone and a hazy drunken tone, like a mumbling, Darren, I love you. It's a voice recorder. I was panic-stricken. I once thought that nothing could make my life worse. When the storm really came, I was completely devastated. Isn't this Xiao San? Shameless. The whispers of the crowd were like a slap in the face. The color drained from my face instantly, and the recording nailed me to the pillar of shame. Sorry. Eden. Take her away. Darren pushed through the crowd, panic showing on his face for the first time. Everything in front of my eyes went white. I just heard the man read out word by word. My father was in debt, my mother committed suicide, I suffer from severe depression that runs in my family, and I was locked up in the South City Mental Hospital for 5 years. Isn't this a mental illness? One stone can cause 1,000 ripples. The crowd was shocked. Why do mentally ill people come out to harm others? You're sick, right? Why don't you just die? Darren stopped and looked up at me. Shock. Stunned. Incredible. I sat helplessly in the noisy crowd, my blood cooling down little by little until my whole body was cold. Allison. Darren was calling me, his voice trembling. I know what's coming next. I'm just waiting calmly for the gate knife to fall and completely destroy my life. She was also assaulted. This is the last sentence of the anonymous whistleblower. The moment he heard it, Darren's face turned pale as paper. Darren's perspective. Since that day, when he came back from the company, Darren hasn't spoken a word. The shutters had been closed for 3 days, and no light could squeeze into the dim room. The missed calls on the phone took over the screen. He didn't click it. It was as if time had pressed the pause button on him. Darren sat there, head hung, lifeless. He still remembered the man's cold tone when he took Allison away. He said, all of us wanted her to live, but you are so iron-fisted that you can easily destroy all our efforts. Gina was stopped outside by the security guard and screamed at him, Darren, do you know that she will have a seizure if she doesn't take her medicine? You lock her up, it's the same as murder. Depression. Mental hospital. These nouns, like countless sharp thorns, were wantonly swirling in his thoughts, tugging at his nerves. Eden knocked on the door, finally opened it a crack and stood at the door. Are you feeling better? Why? Darren's voice was hoarse, and the dull pain in his heart made him feel like dying. Eden was silent for a moment. I'm sorry, I didn't think it was necessary to check, so. The information is fake, isn't it? Darren said softly, Eden, when you told me that she had changed several boyfriends abroad, Allison was locked up in a mental hospital in South City. I'm sorry, I don't know. This explanation is pale and powerless. He knew he couldn't blame Eden entirely. If he had just asked her in detail, perhaps things wouldn't have turned out like this. Darren no longer had the energy to listen to Eden's rebuttal. Gina pushed the door open, despite the secretary's attempt to stop her. The glaring light made Darren squint, but he didn't stop. Secret apologized again and again. "Sorry, Darren, I lost track." "Get out," Darren said. The secretary carefully closed the door for them, and the room returned to darkness. Gina just stood there, seemingly wanting nothing to do with him. "Darren, there are some things you can say now." The window was opened a little, and the cold wind blew through. Darren sat there, completely still, just listening. "If you do something wrong, you will always be punished. Sooner or later. Last year, on Allison's birthday, I jokingly asked her who she loved most in the world. She said, the first one is Mom, the second one is Darren." Darren closed his eyes, feeling these words chill him to the bone. At that time, her illness had just been cured. She only needed to take a small pill every day to be like a normal person. "So this year, in order to pack up my aunt's belongings, I brought her back." Gina's eyes were red. She always said that the breakup was too undignified. This time she wanted to reunite with you properly, or even just take a look at her big businessman from afar. Because she knows that she is not worthy of you. "Darren, is she not good enough for you? Do you know how to get the qualification to compete?" Darren's grip slowly tightened, as if he saw the truth that was enough to break him. "You were already chosen. It was Allison who wrote a letter of complaint demanding fairness and openness, and that's why you got the position. But in return, she offended a lot of people, so that later, after her father ran away, she and her mother were harassed by many people. The invisible hand was around Darren's neck, and he couldn't breathe due to the pain. She had been bullied. Is it because of this?" Gina continued. "You were out of town participating in a competition at the time and didn't call for about a week. So you probably didn't know that everything was going to change here. My family collapsed, her father ran away with his mistress, and a bunch of debt collectors blocked our door every day, demanding Allison and her mother's lives. My aunt committed suicide, leaving Allison behind. She was bullied and then became ill. When it was the worst, I couldn't take my eyes off her for even a second. She was tortured beyond recognition." Gina stared at Darren. "When you got into the accident, Allison cried and asked me to let her die. How did you let her get through this?" Darren looked ashen and closed his eyes. The memories of the past few months tortured him madly. He allowed the manager to get Allison drunk and send her to his room. He lured her into telling the truth after drinking, and then he forged a fake agreement that had no legal effect, just to see her conflicted and painful look. Humiliated and teased again and again. Finally, he paranoidly locked her up in a private hospital in the suburbs. Gina came to see him many times, but he refused to see her. He asked her if she was sick and why she didn't die that year. Allison's eyes became increasingly empty, and she often stared at him, motionless. He mistakenly thought that she still loved him at that time. But now thinking about it, Allison silently questioned how he could treat her so cruelly. "Why, didn't you tell me?" Gina burst into tears. "How do you explain it? She is ill, and even staying alive is a luxury. The only thing she can do is to prevent the people she cares about from being dragged down by herself. She values your studies more than anything else. That competition was your turning point, and it was an opportunity she risked her life to win. She just wants you to be well. Darren, should she die? Should she die?" This sentence was like a heavy hammer, hitting Darren's heart hard. He was the one who harassed her, tortured her, and laughed at her. He was the one who used the contract to insult her, knowing that she was well educated. He is the one who deserves to die. We tried many ways to make Allison want to live. In the end, we found that only one thing worked for her. Darren suddenly didn't dare to listen any further. Gina smiled bitterly and said, "Your name." She always remembers her big businessman. "When I left, I joked with Gina that I would never come back to this place again. Facts have proved that one should not speak carelessly. I am sick again. Winter is the only dry season in South City. In previous years, it was always freezing rain, but this year it snowed for the first time. The doctors and nurses chatted and said, this winter is cold, and the Earth's climate is becoming less and less suitable for human survival. The new year is coming soon, and the branches outside the window are bare, not a single leaf is left. I pressed my face against the window glass and my breath created a layer of mist. There's someone downstairs. He stands there every day. Isn't he cold? Gina walked by with a cup of hot milk, expressionless. Oh, really? It probably won't be cold. She hasn't been in a good mood lately. Even Dr. Smith. So I have to be very careful every day, for fear of making them angry. Gina paused, realizing that she seemed to have scared me, and slowed down her tone. Drink the milk and take the medicine in an hour. Dr. Smith said he will take you to build a snowman tonight. I looked at the man again and felt that he looked familiar. Gina closed the curtain for me and said, "Don't look at it, or you'll be blinded." All right. I went back to bed, took my medicine, and then played games while leaning against the pillow. The voices of Gina and Dr. Smith were heard outside. Then he pushed the door open and walked in. I quickly hid my phone, sat up straight, and said, "I've taken the medicine." The smell of disinfectant immediately filled the room. Smith's eyes wandered over me and finally stopped at my face. "Allison, I won't curse at you because you play games." I slowly took out my phone and asked, "How did you know I was playing games?" "I play it too. I'm familiar with the background music." Smith washed his hands, took off his white coat, and looked at me through the mirror with a slight smile. "Aren't you going to get dressed? I promised to take you to build a snowman. He is from the Department of Thoracic Surgery in the same hospital." It seemed like the first time I saw him was in autumn. It was a rare sunny day, so I squatted over the fence and picked up the balls of wool that suddenly appeared outside. Smith passed by and looked down at me. I was so tired that I was out of breath. "Please, help me pick it up." He looked up at the sign on the yard and said, "According to the regulations, you cannot touch anything dangerous." Seeing that I didn't move, he asked again, "What do you want to do?" "Cross-legged rope." Smith checked the time and squatted down. "Then I'll play with you. After you're done, I'll take the rope away." His lunch break was short, and I quietly reached over the fence and played with him for a while. When he finally left, I said, "Thank you." Later, I encountered it several times again. He was very busy and ignored me. Until one day, he came again, took out the flower rope, and said, "Sorry, I've been too busy lately." Later, he started chatting with me. "You seem to be a man of few words." "Well, I can't say much." "Why?" "I'm sick, so I probably can't say anything happy, and I can't dump my emotional garbage on others." Smith stared at me and said nothing. Later, he came more frequently. Sometimes it can be exhausting. I tried to learn a few jokes and told them to him, and every time Smith looked at me tenderly. He asked, "Allison, what is your wish?" "I hope everyone is happy, including myself." I quickly put on my gear, waited for Smith to put on his down jacket, and then took my hand and went downstairs. There is a gate every few steps here. Only he can take me out. Under the cover of night, heavy snow fell, and my hat soon turned white. Smith handed me a small shovel and said, "Do what you can." Good. The cold air inexplicably put me in a good mood, and I walked around the frozen fountain with a shovel in my hand. When I turned around, I suddenly saw Darren standing not far away. His eyes were bloodshot, his chin was full of stubble, and he was just looking at me. "Darren?" I spoke in a light tone, somewhat surprised. Darren's lips moved. "Allison, I was wrong." In the past, I would have asked arrogantly, "What's wrong with you?" Now, he just held the snow shovel and lowered his head a little awkwardly. "It's okay. I have been through so much hardship that my edges have long been worn away." The wind and snow howled in the dark night. Darren slowly approached me, squatted in front of me, and said in a hoarse voice, "How can it be okay? Allison, please tell me something, okay?" I thought about it and said seriously, "I wish us good health in the new year." At that moment, all the color disappeared from Darren's face. He trembled with tears streaming down his face. "Please don't do this to me. Please." I touched his face and it was icy and cold. So, just like before, I held his face and said seriously, "I wanted to find a decent way to meet you, but it ended up being a mess. I'm sorry, it's my fault." Darren said, "If I had. It was my choice to leave your life. You can't blame anyone else." I spoke slowly and with some sadness. "It was a class reunion, and I went only because you weren't there after I asked." I don't know why he would lie to me. I just wanted to hear from you and see if you were doing well. Darren couldn't stop crying. I'm sorry, it's me. I did it on purpose. Is that so? I smiled, not knowing what to feel inside. Allison, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you during your hardest time. Darren held my hand and finally discovered the scar on my wrist. You don't have to feel sorry. I don't want to force you to stay here. Many years later, when we live in hard times together, we will go over the past when we quarrel and figure out who owes whom. I patiently picked the snowflakes off his eyelashes. Darren, I'm really happy to see you succeed. But I said I would make money for you. Darren held my hand. What would I need those things for without you? I blinked, my nose red from the cold. Look, my scarf cost more than 100 yuan, I have enough money to spend. The light in Darren's eyes was gone, and he asked tremblingly, there's no going back, right? Darren, you have your life, and I want to go my own way. Beicheng, I won't go back. How can hurtful words be easily forgotten? Everyone has memories. I was nailed to the pillar of shame. If I go back, every step I take will be like walking on a knife edge. That would be 10,000 times more painful than giving up a relationship. Darren took a deep breath and took hold of my hands, warming them again like he had done back then. I'm sorry about the recording. I was the one who seduced you into saying that. I didn't touch you that night. My eyes were hot. Darren, then apologize to me. Say sorry. He was in so much pain that he greedily carved my face into his memory as a final farewell. Sorry. I patted his shoulder gently, but in the end, I didn't say, it's okay. Darren, live the rest of your life in peace and happiness. The snow in the sky is getting heavier. I turned around, took steps hard, and tried to move forward, my body being blown all over the place by the wind. The wind and snow howled behind me, and the sound gradually faded away. I don't know if it was the sound of the wind or Darren crying. Smith was wearing a camel coat and standing under the dim street lights, with his hands in his pockets. I could vaguely see his clear brows and focused gaze. I walked closer. He acted as if he hadn't noticed anything and asked, what did you see? I brushed off the snow on the brim of my hat, looked up, and said with red eyes, Dr. Smith. What's wrong? Thank you. A few days later, I saw Darren on the news in the entertainment section. He has lost a lot of weight. When faced with the interview, he told the media everything he had done. He forced me, and he also guided me to say that recording. At the same time, he also posted a copy of the agreement. The signatories were him and Helen. After 2 years of engagement, they broke up peacefully and achieved a win-win cooperation. The two had no plans to get married. That night was the day, as originally written in the agreement, for a press conference to announce the cancellation of the engagement. This incident undoubtedly dealt a devastating blow to Darren's company, and the reputation and status accumulated over the years plummeted. Later, Eden called me. He said, I'm sorry, Allison, I owe you an explanation. He said he didn't know people well. Helen had some selfish thoughts and exposed my affairs. Those creditors once extorted 500,000 yuan from me. Later, I was taken to a private hospital by Darren and they couldn't contact me, so they turned around and sold my business to Helen at twice the price. He also said that he was worried about Darren's work status and asked me if I could go back. I still have the same answer. I have said all that needs to be said, and there is nothing I can do about the rest. 3 months later, my condition was stable and I was about to be discharged from the hospital. The warm sunlight shines on my body and spring flowers bloom outside the window. The familiar smell of disinfectant came again. I knew it was Smith. Is there anything to eat? I've been busy all day, give me something to eat. He's been so busy, he's always looking for food at my place lately. I uncovered my woolen scarf to reveal the steaming hot bean paste buns. Smith took it without hesitation, tore open the packaging, and ate it with relish. I just stared at him like that until he asked in a funny tone, why are you looking at me like that? You are easy to feed. Smith finished eating. Have you ever considered settling here? Why do you ask? Well, I have an apartment that I'm renting out. I thought for a moment, are you short of money? Because he does seem sincere. I don't have much income now, so I may not be able to afford the expensive rent. I'm cheap. Smith lied seriously, I have no neighbors, and I'm scared. I blinked, he looked like he was trying to trick people, but I wasn't sure. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, a gust of spring breeze made me feel happy. A long-lost smile appeared on my face. When crossing the road, I forgot to look at the traffic lights, and Smith grabbed the back of my neck and dragged me back mercilessly. I bumped into his arms unexpectedly. He held my hand and didn't let go. You? Yeah, chasing you. His voice was very soft and casual, with the corners of his lips slightly raised, as if he was saying something like, "The weather is very nice today." In the distance, children were playing and humming toy drums. I heard the heart beating. My voice was unsteady, but I still raised my head bravely and looked at Smith. I have loved someone for many, many years, I am not sure. The wind ruffled Smith's hair. His eyes were gentle. Allison, I have also loved someone for many years. Give me a chance. At that moment, my eyes were a little wet. I'm very bad. I've been sick and my body is. Allison, you once said that you wanted everyone to be happy, including yourself. Smith blinked, I hope your wish comes true. A breeze blows. The sunlight passed through the treetops and fell on his eyebrows. I once thought that the spring was out of reach, but now it is full of flowers and the spring is in full swing. Darren's perspective. The following winter, Helen's company declared bankruptcy. Those who bullied Allison were also sent to jail by Darren. After several crises, Darren's company finally came back to life. That day, Darren sat alone in the office for a long time. Heavy snow was falling outside the window, and the car lights downstairs were connected in a continuous pattern. It had been half a month since he started working, and it felt like a lifetime ago. He suddenly remembered that it snowed on this day a year ago. Allison showed up at the class reunion. The moment she saw him appear with Helen, her eyes were filled with astonishment and panic. Later, he dreamed of that scene countless times. I have also made changes in my dreams countless times. He broke off the engagement early and called the police when the manager drugged her. I never forced her to drink, nor did I say harsh words to her. He had a decent reunion just as Allison had expected. Allison came back and snuggled in his arms late at night. She told him what happened that year and cried with grievance. Darren hugged her, kissed her, comforted her, and proposed to her. Later, they had a home. He and Allison took wedding photos. In the photo, she was smiling beautifully, with her fingers intertwined with his. Every time he woke up from a dream, he lay alone in bed, listening to the ticking sound of the pendulum. He will realize that time is moving forward and Allison will never appear in his life again. She left completely. On that snowy night in South City, Allison wished him peace and happiness for the rest of his life, her eyes sincere and frank. She said she wasn't coming back. She felt sad that there was no decent reunion. Her eyes were red when she spoke. Because he hurt her, she decided to leave. There were no words of blame, no resentful complaints. The words, "May you live a peaceful and happy life for the rest of your life," were like a gentle knife that pierced deeply into his heart, bringing with it a hidden pain that would never go away. Due to long-term irregular work and rest, he developed stomach problems. When it occurs, the pain is horrible. That night, he woke up from his dream again and lay on the cold bed, with a cold moon outside the window. He vaguely remembered that Allison accompanied him to watch the moon in his previous life. He suddenly missed Allison very much and booked a flight to South City the next day. A year later, I visited this place again and the weather was still the same. The wind was strong and the snow was heavy. People are hurrying on the road. Darren looked for the address and found an apartment. It was getting dark, but the residents on the second floor did not turn on the lights. Darren was standing in a corner waiting. Half an hour later, Allison's voice came, gentle and serious, "The tomato brisket there is not tasty. Next time you buy some brisket, I will make it for you. Gina also likes it, ask her to come and eat it." Darren looked over subconsciously, and the familiar figure suddenly came into his sight. She was wearing a little white hat, maybe a little pink hat, a little gray hat. Anyway, once covered with snow, only white is left. I have become a little plumper and no longer stagger when walking in the snow. Next to her was a tall figure wearing glasses, always looking at her gently. He raised his eyes slightly, his gaze fell on Darren, and suddenly stopped moving. The two men were separated by the wind and snow, and neither of them spoke. "Hey, Smith, can you hear me?" It was still the familiar tone, but it was spoken to another person. Smith looked away. "I heard you want to make tomato beef brisket, but you burned the pot last time, and I haven't bought a pot yet." Allison hung her head in frustration. "Oh, sorry." Smith patted the hat on her head, as if he was patting a cute white bear. "You go home first, your son is still at home." "Where are you going?" "Buy a pot." "Where's the brisket?" "Let's buy it together." "So anxious?" "Well, we'll eat it tonight." Allison trotted into the corridor. Smith then looked over. Darren had nothing to say, so he just said, "Congratulations." Smith smiled. "Thank you." In fact, he knew that Darren had misunderstood Son, the cat he and Allison raised. But Smith didn't want to explain that he had given Allison a chance last year when he brought her down to build a snowman. Regardless, it was over between Allison and him. Everyone should be well. Her condition? Stable. Smith said directly, "She has a good temper and doesn't get angry easily. She's a very good girl." Darren knew she was doing well, because he knew what Allison looked like when she was happy. Smith looked through his glasses with sharp scrutiny. "Darren, how many years have you known her?" 14 years. "You know her better than I do." "Her birthday is coming up and I want to give her a birthday present. Snacks, puffed foods, are best. She doesn't like chocolate." Darren blurted out without thinking. Smith nodded, businesslike. "Thank you. 14 years. You know her better than I do." These words were Smith's expression of dissatisfaction with him. "If I knew, why would I hate Allison so much? Why did she suffer so much in the days that followed?" "Darren?" A clear voice pierced through the wind and snow. Darren suddenly turned his head and looked over. The face that I had been thinking about day and night suddenly appeared in my sight. Even the curve of his smile is exactly the same as in my memory. Allison was holding an umbrella and holding another in her arms. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Why are you here?" Darren's heart ached, and he saw clarity and calmness in her eyes. "She has let it go." He was silent for a moment, then said, "Talking about business, passing by, and seeing Smith, we chatted for a few minutes." "Are you passing by the neighborhood?" Allison was a little confused. Smith asked, "Why are you coming down again?" Allison remembered something and handed over the umbrella. "I saw that it was snowing too hard and I was worried that you might catch a cold, so I came down to give you the umbrella." When she spoke to Smith, the corners of her mouth rose slightly and her eyes were warm. This scene hurt Darren's eyes. "Would you like to come over to my house?" Smith asked politely. Darren smiled and said, "No, I have a flight tonight and I'm in a hurry." Allison wrapped her coat tightly around her and suddenly remembered something. "Wait for me." After saying that, he turned and ran into the building. Smith followed him up with a blank expression. Darren waited downstairs for a while, and the snow was getting heavier. The sky is gray and overcast, making people feel depressed. My stomach started to hurt again. Eden called, "Darren." He hesitated to speak. "Your medical examination report is out. It's stomach cancer." Darren stood still, not knowing whether he heard it or not. He looked up at the vast snow and hummed, "Got it." Then he hung up the phone. He continued to wait as if nothing had happened, his eyes always fixed on the corridor entrance. A beam of warm light peeked out from inside, fell on the snow, and formed a trapezoid. After a while, Allison came down alone. Smith wrapped her up like a cotton ball that made her unable to move. She trudged over with a small red box in her arms and handed it to Darren. "I baked these cookies myself. You can take them and eat them on the way." Darren took it and suddenly remembered that Allison liked to bake many years ago. It tasted terrible at that time, with a fishy smell. All the failed products went into his stomach. She really has no talent in cooking. Darren also said that Allison was not allowed to enter the kitchen at home from now on. "In the blink of an eye, you can do it well." Allison said sincerely, "Thank you for donating to us." Darren knew that their organization was helping people with mental illnesses and difficulties in life. "So I donate every month." He kept a small portion for himself as living expenses. Darren said, "You're welcome." Then he stared at her face and said, "It's cold, go back. I probably won't come again." Allison smiled and said, "How could that be? I'll have to invite you to the awards ceremony next time." Darren's throat was blocked and he said nothing. She turned around, her snow boots squeaked on the snow, and just before she entered the door, she turned back and called him, "Darren." Darren looked up immediately, and his heart suddenly came alive. He waited for her to say something. Allison just smiled at him and said, "Happy New Year." A very ordinary New Year's greeting. Even health and happiness are gone. Darren's heart returned to silence. He stood in the cold wind and replied, "Happy New Year." End.